Here's Matt Powell to give some easily debunkable arguments for young Earth creationism.
Many people are of the persuasion that if you're a young Earth creationist, that somehow you've bought into a conspiracy theory.
Well, no, young Earth creationism is not a conspiracy theory per se, but belief in it is often accompanied by the belief that the reason why the vast majority of scientists don't take creationism seriously is because they have conspired to suppress it and suppress the work of any scientist who advocates for it.
But I'm here to tell you that young Earth creationism and creation science itself is in fact the best explanation for the observations that we make.
If that were the case, it would be able to falsifiably explain the heat problem. Some creationists themselves admit to not having a falsifiable explanation for it. I'll let Gutsick Gibbon explain what the heat problem is.
So here's the rub with regard to the heat problem, okay? In geology, things happen really, really slowly, and this is a problem for young Earth creationists. They also have an issue with astronomy, with things like the speed of light, etc., but we're just going to talk about geology today, things on the planet. This includes things like deposition, how canyons are created, so like erosion. It includes sedimentation, how long it takes for things like limestone and chalk to harden and form big cliffs like the ones we find at Dover and elsewhere. It includes hardening of magma for the creation of like archipelagos, big island chains. It includes the movement of the continents, which are currently moving at a rate approximately similar to how fast your fingernails grow. And young Earth creationists believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old. This is quite a bit shorter than our conventional ages of 4.5 billion years of age. Now, radiometric dating relies on the decay of elements, and when elements decay, they release heat. In fact, all of the geologic processes that I just talked about also release heat. So you can see where this is going. We have 6,000 years, if we are looking at this from a young Earth creationist perspective, for approximately 4.5 billion years worth of heat. And it actually gets a lot worse than that because most creationists suppose that this heat release, in order to explain, again, the geologic column, had to have happened during the year-long event of Noah's flood. So we have 1 year for 4.5 billion years worth of heat release. Now, myself and others have done the math before on this as far as the physical ramifications for the planet if you were to take 4.5 billion years worth of decay and other geologic events and cram them into a single year, as well as the more conservative estimate, what if you did it for just 500 million years worth of geologic events and decay? And the numbers are pretty staggering.
If all of the heat that is generated by the physical processes which young Earth creationists insist happened in only 1 year really did happen in that short a time span, it would be enough to vaporize the oceans and sterilize the planet.
They don't really have a solution for this problem. In fact, I've talked many times on this channel about their attempts at finding a solution and how they keep coming up empty-handed and going, well, we can't rule out a miracle, which I've told you guys this before, but the second miracles become involved, science just doesn't care anymore. It ceases to be investigatable by the scientific method. Professional creationists recognize this, the amateurs, not so much.
I suspect Matt is among the creationists who do not recognize that simply saying that the heat problem is explained by a miracle is not a good explanation for the observations that we make in the world at all, let alone the best explanation. Perhaps he's one of the creationists who thinks that there is some physical explanation for this, but I've never seen a proposed physical explanation that doesn't ignore or misunderstand the laws of physics.
You see, we find dinosaur soft tissue and dinosaur blood of dinosaurs that supposedly existed 65 plus million years ago.
Matt's assuming that soft tissue can't last that long. It wouldn't violate the laws of physics for soft tissue to last many millions of years, but it would violate the laws of physics for life on Earth to survive 4.5 billion years worth of heat being released all in 1 year. The consensus with respect to soft tissue being found inside fossils is that the iron content in the tissue can effectively preserve it for that long. This is clearly a simpler and more probable explanation than the Earth somehow being only 5,000 or 6,000 years old, given the heat problem that such an explanation entails.
But this evidence that we've found not only contradicts that, but proves that the Bible was correct when the Bible told us that God made man and dinosaurs together.
No, it doesn't. Even if the presence of soft tissue proved that the fossils can't be 65 million years old, which it doesn't, that wouldn't prove that they are young enough to have existed at the same time as humans. The only way you could argue that is if you could prove that it is impossible for soft tissue to last that long. Creationists haven't done that.
One of the other reasons that we know that creation science is true is because we find bent rock layers all across the world. Now, you cannot bend hard rock. According to evolution, these layers were slowly formed through plate tectonic shifts in the crust.
No, that's not according to evolution, it's according to geology. And in fact, you can sometimes bend rock. Rock is not totally devoid of plasticity. It can bend under certain conditions.
But the truth is that these layers would have not only eroded as they're being created, right? Because gravity causes everything to erode flat over time.
Gravity causes everything to erode? I'm curious as to what Matt thinks the word erode means. Wind and water cause things to erode. I don't know how gravity causes things to erode.
Mountains wouldn't exist if millions of years existed, because gravity would have eroded those mountains.
If what he means is that gravity would have pulled the mountains back into the earth, which is not erosion, by the way, then he seems not to understand that gravity is not the only force at work. Tectonic forces which create mountains are strong enough to counteract the effect of gravity.
But even if we enter into fantasy land and pretend that it's true, it does not explain the bends in the rocks that we observe.
What explains the bends in the rocks is that rock has some degree of plasticity.
You see, we observe these bends that literally show that these rocks were moist and soft and lifted up all together in one event, in a catastrophic event, i.e. Noah's flood.
Even if you could show that the rocks had to be moist and soft, which they would not, in fact, have to be, it wouldn't follow from this that all the bends we see all over the world were created in one single event. In fact, given that the formation of sedimentary layers creates heat, the idea that they all formed at once contributes to the heat problem, which renders impossible any non-miraculous explanation of how this could have happened all at once.
Like I said before, creation science isn't just some theory or just some random thing that people believe in.
Well, no, it's certainly not a theory. Scientific theories, by definition, are supported by the preponderance of evidence. Creationism is not.
I'm a young earth creationist because I believe in demonstrated fact that's been shown in real time and that you can verifiably back up with facts and evidence.
When have you backed up the idea that rocks are too brittle to be bent under any circumstances at all, or that soft tissue can't be preserved for millions of years?
One of the other things that proves creation science is mutation rates. From generation to generation, us humans accumulate 100 to 200 more mutations than our parents had. So our offspring is continuously gaining more and more mutations. The genetic load of mutations is increasing over time as we reproduce.
This actually supports evolution. Mutation is one of the essential mechanisms of evolution.
This means that we did not all descend from a common ancestor. It means that we were created individually and that we have built-in genetic diversity.
How does that follow? It actually shows the opposite. If no organisms ever mutated, then that would prove that all life could not have had a common ancestor and that the genetic diversity of every species must have been built in. The only way that all organisms, some of whom have genes that other organisms don't, could have had a common ancestor is if those genes were produced by mutation. The fact that we have mutations that our parents don't is what allows very genetically different organisms to have come from a common ancestor.
And that creation science, once again, is something that you can show to be true. Look, either God created the world, or the world created itself.
Or it was created by natural processes. Or if by world you mean the universe, it wasn't created at all, because you can't create something if it already exists, and there was never a time when the universe didn't already exist. This should be obvious given that the universe is the space-time continuum, and it would be a contradiction to say that there was a time when the space-time continuum didn't exist.
Either everything popped into existence from magic, from nothing,
which is what you believe. I don't believe that it popped into existence at all because something can't pop into existence if it already exists, and there was, by definition, never a time when the space-time continuum, that is to say the universe, didn't already exist.
Or it was designed.
Also by magic and out of nothing, which we're supposed to believe is more rational for some reason.
It's either magic or intelligent design.
Which we are to believe is somehow different from magic.
And anybody who considers the facts, many people have said, well, aren't you afraid of exposing evolution? A lot of these atheists will say, aren't you afraid, Matt, of exposing evolution? to your viewers, don't you realize people are going to end up leaving creationism in the droves?
Please name a single one of these atheists who say that. Most of us know that's not how religion works. Folks who are religious were rarely persuaded to be religious by evidence, so there's little, if any, reason to believe that they would be dissuaded by evidence. Also, you don't even describe evolution accurately, so I doubt anyone would give up a view they hold on faith because you presented a straw man of evolution to them.
But the fact of the matter is that people are not going to leave the light once they've seen the truth to go into believing in a counterfeit.
How many atheists, or even old Earth creationists, have you managed to convert with your shtick, Matt? How many of them have you convinced that young Earth creationism is the truth?
Once you've seen the glorious light of the truth, it's almost impossible to just outright believe a lie.
I agree. I think that's why I don't see a lot of atheists or even old Earth creationists being converted to young Earth creationism.
Because the truth is so powerful and fears no investigation that it stands up against all scrutiny that would come from all of these other worldviews that are imposed upon it and try to attack this model of creation science.
Then you must have a solution to the heat problem, right? A falsifiable one, and not just, it was a miracle, right?
It is true. You can show it to be fact. Look, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth is a fact of history.
Assertions have to be coherent to be facts. The assertion that space-time can be created, despite the fact that there was never a time when it didn't already exist, is not coherent. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.